Hi, and welcome to the LinkedIn Collective Studio at Cannes. I'm Valerie Beauchamp, VP and Global Head of Agency Development and Marketer Education at LinkedIn. Every year, marketers and advertisers from around the world gather at the Cannes Lion International Festival of Creativity to celebrate the best work in the industry. But bold, innovative, outstanding work doesn't just happen. It has to be nurtured, encouraged, and cultivated. To talk more about creativity and building an environment that champions creative expression, I'm joined in the studio today by three industry experts on the topic. Greg Hahn, Chief Creative Officer and co-founder of Mischief, Amie Miller, Chief Talent Officer at TBWA Worldwide, and Cynthia Clevenger, SVP of B2B Marketing at Tubi. Welcome all.
Thank
you
you
for being here. Let's start with a question for all of you. So in recent years, we've seen B2B creativity really begin to flourish, but this so-called B2B creative renaissance didn't just happen overnight. I'm curious to get your perspective, like what factors do you think played a part?
Are we in a renaissance? Is that happening right now for B2B? I mean, I still think there's a lot of room to grow on the B2B side, and I do think people have been testing a lot more and testing different formats, different creatives. LinkedIn is a great conduit for a lot of that. But I still think we have a lot of way to go. I think some B2B marketing is still pretty boring. And if I see another stat or another weird headline that's got like a hip hop song but is about data, I don't know. That said, I do think that there are a number of brands and partners and agencies who are really leaning in and upping the game. So it's not all data and charts, but I think we have a little ways to go. I don't know how you guys feel about it.
Yeah, pretty much the same, but I do think there is a lot more better B2B work out there, and I think it's the same factors that are influencing consumer marketing. It's just so crowded, and people are getting bombarded, so if you don't stand out, you are wasting your money. And also I think in B2B, there's an onus on the work to be famous, I feel. Because when someone makes a decision in B2B, their careers could be on the line, and it's also made by a committee. So if they go with somebody no one's ever heard of, or something that seems like a wild card, they're really taking a risk. So the more famous you are as a brand, the easier that decision becomes for somebody else.
Yeah, that's fair. Amie and
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I think the part of what makes creativity so critical and so exciting is that we, as creative companies, we get excited by the most interesting challenges. And B2B is one of those areas where, depending on your outlook, your approach, your partnership with your clients, it's actually, and I agree, there's a lot of room for improvement there. And settling seems to be a bit of the status quo, unfortunately, when it comes to B2B. But I think there's, in a creative organization, your role as a leader is to get your teams excited about solving those issues as well.
Yeah. So, Greg, I'd love to go to you. Creativity is one of those things that is like really hard to pinpoint, to measure, to quantify, and yet when someone does it brilliantly, like it's just so clear. At Mischief, your mantra is about creating a safe place for dangerous ideas. How do you apply that mantra day to day?
Yeah, I mean, we were founded on this idea of what would you do if you weren't afraid? So instilling that into everything we do and creating this atmosphere is like, I think a problem with a lot of agencies is that they're their own worst enemy and they stop themselves before it even gets to the client. So our whole way of working is you're not going to get in trouble for showing us something that pushes it too far. We can always bring it back, but we'd rather go too far than not far enough. And I kind of, when people start, depending what any department at Mischief is, I like to tell them to have an advertising lobotomy. And forget everything you've learned in other agencies because we're going to do something different. Because we stop ourselves so much, and want to put that aside and just like remove fear from the room. It's not about playing not to lose. It's about playing to win. And I think when you have that mentality, it makes the work more fun.
Amie, TBWA is known famously as a disruption company with a disruption mindset. So explain to us a little bit, like what does that mean and how does it come to life in day-to-day operations?
Yeah, sure. I mean, disruption for us as a company is sort of our reason for being. It's a language that we speak around the global collective. And it's a way to remind ourselves and our clients what sort of creative pact we've gotten into together. And it reminds us of the expectations we have for ourselves and the expectations our clients have for us. But, in creative organizations, I think for a long time, the operating model was chaos. And it worked for us, and it was fun, and it was, but as business grew and became a bit more sophisticated, there's a more disciplined creative approach that's necessary. And, disruption takes us from understanding conventions to vision to understanding what it is that we're going to change. And it's a bit of like our religion at TBWA. It's funny, I'll interview candidates that that had worked for us a long time ago, and they're like, disruption still runs through my veins. But I think creativity is hard. It's really hard work. But having a practice like disruption and a framework like disruption that runs through this company, no matter what department you're in, no matter what your day-to-day job is, it is a sort of higher level of creative thinking and leads us to doing brave work.
That's great. So Cynthia, Tubi is a brand that's famous for its quirky, fun brand personality, and your creative is super eye-catching and really bold. I think you guys won 5 Cannes Lions last year, right? So how do you cultivate that culture of creativity within your business, and how important is this sort of internal culture to ensuring or driving award-winning work?
Well, I'll say one, it's not just internal. It really is our partners, and Mischief has been our creative AOR since we did win 5 Cannes Lions. And fingers crossed for a B2B campaign this year. But so I think it's not just internal. I do think your agencies are an extension of your marketing team. And I hear our head of strategy at Mischief all the time. He says we and us, and it is us, right? They know our brand just as well as we do. So I think that's really important. I would say on the B2B marketing side of things, I've worked in many organizations as a B2B marketer where I've reported to the CRO, and I love our CRO, Jeff Lucas. I don't report to him. I report to our CMO. And this is, we're unique because we're a consumer brand and we're a B2B brand. We're ad supported. But we have to start at the top with just who the brand is, what our ethos is, developing that narrative, because that's what's going to make B2B marketing more creative, is if we're consistent with what we're doing on the consumer side. And so we brief in our agencies across both. We're not doing a lot of things in silos. Our team's really small too, so I'm on the calls when we were talking about Super Bowl, and I'm a B2B marketer. So I think it has a lot to do with how you're structured internally and how you leverage your true partnerships with your agencies.
As a former agency person, I'm obsessed with that answer.
I will say, the secret to our success with Tubi is, in all of our clients, is trust. There's such a mutual trust, and I think that's where it breaks down with a lot of client agency relationships. Is there's a lot of second guessing or overthinking or revision, but if you're open and honest and trust each other, you can do anything.
Yeah, otherwise that's where that fear begins to creep in that you were talking about, you're trying to battle. So a question for all of you. When it comes to redesigning your team or your business to foster and nurture creativity, what are fundamental factors that are important in that, and where should you start?
I think it's important to remind our teams every day to switch off the autopilot. We are creative companies who have become very sophisticated, focused on delivering things on time and fiscally responsible, and so we create ways of working every day to kind of be efficient and effective and get things done. And I think we forget that part of creativity is that we spend just as much time unlearning what it is we think we know and what's right, and just turning off that autopilot. It's you don't always already know the answer, but you should have the confidence and the bravery to know that getting messy and solving the problem is the way to the best outcome. So it's a daily reminder, turn off the autopilot, guys. Let's reinvent today. So I think that's a great starting place.
It's so easy to fall into that too, right? And you don't even realize you're doing it. Thoughts from you too on that?
I mean, I'll just say similarly, in addition to how we're structured internally, that kind of fosters that type of creativity and development just by way of osmosis of learning about the other parts of the business. The other thing that's key for us is what's our audience doing, right? What are they thinking about? Where are they? What social platforms are they on? And so really trying to find out and stay on top of it, and it's hard. It can be really overwhelming. But what did they think about every day? Even if that doesn't relate to me talking to an advertiser about the reach and scale that we can provide or the numbers of that, still having that audience mindset of who the end consumer is. And at Tubi, we are viewer first, and that's why our ad model works. So that's really key and important, is to cull creativity from your consumers and your customers, and drive inspiration from what they're telling us. And a lot of times that does inform a lot of what we do with Mischief and our other partners.
Right. I mean, to that end, a lot of what we look for are people who are great problem solvers and curious, and most of all empathetic, who can, what I mean by that is like they can see the world through others' eyes, but that may not be them, you know, like, so they can understand what a consumer looking at this would know about. And the other thing is, like, at Mischief, we have a reputation for being, you know, doing out there creative, but that only works if you are grounded on solid strategy. And if you have the discipline in the other departments to make that work happen, you know. So Mischief is a little bit like the advertising mullet, you know, because we got like the party up front, but there's some strong business happening, you know, in the back. So we work together symbiotically to make sure that everything has a reason for being and not just out there, and then that people support each other.
Yeah. Okay, last question. Looking into the future, it's a little future casting here, and the disruptor that the industry's been discussing, that is AI. How do you think we will see creativity reimagined or redefined in the context of this technology?
I mean, I think for us, and this is very specific to a B2B marketing team, but I'm just so excited to automate that my team does. That takes up all day. I have a brilliant lead on my team who's, you know, a couple years into his career. He just is like so strategic, but he spends a ton of time looking for the case study that somebody slacked him for the other things. So like, automate that stuff and make it easier for us to scale some of the things that sales is looking for, or some copy that we might need to do, not ad copy, but things for email templates or things like that, to really help my team and folks on our team continue to flourish in their own careers at Tubi and beyond. So that's where I see such a positive outlook on what AI can do to an organization.
I see it as a positive influence too, for those exact same reasons, but also when you know, AI will level the playing field in more ways than I think we've ever seen, which pushes us as creative companies to have to be that much better. And I love those catalysts during our, you know, especially like, you know, in my career in the business, it's every time something comes along that feels a bit scary or threatening, we always do better as creative companies. And so I think it's a positive thing for us.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, I think obviously we'll take care of some of the stuff we don't want to do, and the automation is great, which should free us up. But, you know, it's unseen or unlearned yet how that will affect our thinking in the creative process. But if you take care of some of the stuff that you're, you know, spending your time on that anybody can do or that you can automate, you will, you know, in theory, have more time to work on creative projects. But I also think it might change the way we think a little bit, because there is a inefficiency to the creative process that's good. And we shouldn't eliminate all that, because you'll discover something and think of ways that computers can't. It's kind of like it's been said, like when photography started to become really prominent, we got abstract art because photography couldn't do that. So that effect might be really interesting in what happens to creative departments in the next couple of years.
Yeah. That's all we have time for today. Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Amie. Thank you, Cynthia, for joining us in the studio and sharing your thoughts. For more B2B trends and insights, make sure to check out the 2024 B2B Marketing Benchmark Report. Thank you.